So a friend of mine was talking to a friend of his, and somewhere in the middle of this very gay game of telephone, I heard something that hit me in the gut. He said, Grindr is the only connection to the gay world I have. Let that sink in. Not a friendship circle, not a community center, not a book club or sports team. Grindr. And before you judge, he knew it wasn't great. He hated it. Perhaps it was the inferiority complex such experiences give us, or the endless scrolling, or how we always feel a little lonelier after logging off than before. But still, we keep logging on. Because in a world that doesn't always make space for queer connection, Grindr is at least something. This week's episode asks the uncomfortable question: are apps the only way we know how to connect as gay men?
It's Wednesdays.
Hello, 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 queers, gays, theys, hays, and straights, and everyone else on the spectrum in between, wherever you're at. Welcome back to yet another episode of Wednesdays with Woody, your weekly unfiltered dive into identity, intimacy, and the mess and magic of being human. Today we're talking about connection, or rather, the lack of it. We are going to start right in the thick of it. We're going to start with the gay apps and a couple of stats just to set the scene and paint a picture so that we're all hopefully singing from the same hymn book, you know. So yeah, let's start with the gay apps. Grindr, we'll add Tinder there. Scruff, Her, and Field, you name it. For millions of queer folks, these apps are a digital lifeline. They offer access, visibility, and a sense that you're not the only one. But the truth is, while they may open doors, they rarely build homes. According to a 2023 study by Radar, 76% of queer men aged between 18 and 29 are using dating apps. And yet, a 2022 Trevor Project report found that 72% of LGBTQIA plus youth reported feeling lonely most of the time. That's despite having more digital tools to connect than any previous generation. Another survey from 2023 showed that 91% of dating app users reported negative experiences. 1 in 4 deleted apps due to stress, drug solicitation, or burnout. So what does this tell us? That apps don't solve for loneliness. They amplify it. They give us the illusion of connection without depth. The swipe becomes a slot machine for affection. And when it doesn't play out, we log off, feeling more empty than before. I don't use these apps. I don't use Grindr and I don't use Scruff and I am not on Tinder. And I don't mean to sound self-righteous or that like I'm on a high horse or anything, but partially it's because I met Ryan shortly after coming out. I don't want to say fortunate. I would rather lean into blessed. I was very blessed to have met Ryan shortly after coming out, and therefore there wasn't much of a space or need to be able to have access to these apps and to utilize them. All of this being said, if you are in a relationship and you and your partner are very comfortable with being on these apps, please go on, do you. Like, life is too short to live by, I don't know, some invisible rules about how you should conduct yourself in your relationship. It just depends on you and your partner. So please, I'm personally not judging anyone for if they're on an app and they're in a relationship. I know that that's a thing for many couples. And I don't know why it's a thing. This is the 21st century, and I'm not saying let's tear down all senses of what being in a relationship should and should not be and try to constitute. No, I'm saying this is your life and you need to honestly live it the way that you want to live it, without anyone telling you how to live it. But anyway, let's get back to this week's episode. Stepping away from these apps doesn't necessarily mean that you're stepping into a connected queer life. In fact, sometimes it feels like the complete opposite. I've been told I'm intimidating, not in a threatening way, just really self-assured. And in gay culture, confidence can sometimes read as unapproachable. In fact, I think in any culture, your confidence can read as being completely unapproachable. If you're not smiling coyly, playing it soft, or visibly looking for attention, you're assumed to be aloof. And I have heard that about myself quite a few times. I want to say that's something I'm working on, but I'm really not working on it. But here's the thing, and I think a lot of us feel like this a lot of the times, whether you're in a relationship or you're not in a relationship, and you just find yourself in a setting that is really unfamiliar. We walk into a space, and we wonder, why hasn't anyone said hi? And at the same time, we're too scared to say hi ourselves. And so for many people, I can imagine they would log on to a Grindr or, I don't know, a Tinder, whatever the case might be. You're going to log on to these apps and you're going to start swiping because rejection hurts less through our screens. But is that really connection, or just a coping mechanism for a world that hasn't taught us how to approach each other with kindness and vulnerability and curiosity? So if apps aren't serving us, then what is? Let's talk a little bit about what's working. In South Africa, I've heard of queer soccer leagues, drag brunches, pride volunteer programs are popping up as app-free connection spaces. Globally, people are organizing gay run clubs, book clubs, hiking groups, sober picnics, and bowling leagues. These are intentional, offline spaces where people come not just to hook up, but to belong. And yes, it takes effort. It takes time, especially in a world where we spend an average of 7 hours a day online. It's easier to swipe than to show up. A lot of us suffer from anxiety. A lot of us suffer with our own things and our own baggages, and we think the rest of the world has got their stuff sorted out. But a lot of the times I think that we forget that when you walk up into a space, everyone in that space, no matter how confident they might be presenting themselves or whatever the case might be, whether they're in the corner shyly scrolling through their phone, trying to act like they are not present and in the moment, every human being I've ever had at least a decent conversation with comes into any setting with a certain level of baggage and a certain level of insecurity. Nobody, don't be fooled. Nobody walks up into a space and is like, oh yes, I'm here to own it. I know we love to believe it, but that's not the case. Showing up is where the magic happens. And I think that showing up as authentically as you possibly can, even if you're shy, even if you're nervous, whatever the case might be, just showing up is really where the magic happens. That moment you make eye contact and laugh without emojis, that silence that doesn't feel awkward, that shared moment of me too, that's what we're missing. And we need to build it back. The internet has flattened our connections. And in the beginning, I think that this idea of being able to connect with lots of people all at once was really great. It was really exciting to really expand what would otherwise be a very small and tiny place on the planet. Right now, it just feels as though, I don't know, we're all in it together. But everything right now is super fast. Everything is filtered. Everything is curated. And many dating apps and gay apps have followed suit, offering menus of people with stats, height, weight, age, race. But I think that we need to call it what it is. It's not just convenience, it's commodification, and it can lead to very real harm. The Grindr tagline might as well be 0 feet away, but emotional distance remains sky high. Even worse, this culture that we've built on these apps breeds selective desirability, built with racism, fat phobia, the no femmes, no fats, no Asians, no black syndrome. What we're really doing is filtering our softness, our vulnerability, our differences. When connection becomes a checklist, no one wins. Connection. Real, sustained, affirming connection. The kind that can't be captured in a profile picture. The kind that requires time and effort and presence. In online spaces, especially apps, everything becomes transactional. But human beings aren't transactional. We need intimacy, we need friendship, shared language, and the safety to show up unpolished. So are apps our only way of connecting as gay men? They often feel like it because they're so easily accessible. But the deeper truth is, they've become dominant, not because they're better, but because we lack alternatives. As more queer spaces close, bars, clubs, bookstores, even community centers, our options are dwindling. Apps, however, remain. Like fast food in a food desert, immediate, available, and often unsatisfying. They're designed for convenience, not connection. For dopamine, not depth, and that's the commodification. And it always comes with a cost to our mental health, our emotional well-being. What starts as a swipe often ends in a spiral of comparison, of ghosting, of disconnection. So no, they're not our only way to connect, but without effort, they become the default. And that's where the harm begins. We have to rebuild something richer. I don't think that the future is a deletion, but it does appear that the future does look like evolution. That we need to build platforms that don't profit from our pain, but nurture our potential. Apps designed for friendship, for mentorship, for intergenerational storytelling, creative collaboration, peer support, recovery, and possibly joy. I wonder if we can imagine apps that don't ask what you're looking for, but what lights you up. That don't reduce us to tribes and tags, but invite us to tell our story, to ask for help, to form circles of care. And I know that it sounds a bit like a utopia, but it is necessary, because connection should never feel like consumption. It should feel like co-creation. A lot of the times I think that we have ourselves to blame for how things are. When the world adopted social media platforms and apps as a form of communication, we really did let the worst of ourselves take center stage. And now we find ourselves retreating, trying to create different types of community. And maybe this is actually just the evolution of the sort of experience that we've all been on, or that we are currently all on, and that we want to create something completely different from what we had chosen to create before. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's powerful, but it's up to us. So right now, I do think that the way that we will form connection in this digital age, it might still continue being through these apps. It might be that this is just how we evolve. Maybe there's something different. Maybe AI gives us a different opportunity to connect with each other. I don't know. I do not have all the answers. But I would like to hope and believe that we decide to do something very different as we move forward in this life. Because connecting with another human being is very powerful. I can only try to imagine a different kind of future, but it's going to take so much action from us, so much will and desire to create and to be different kinds of people in order to form meaningful connections with each other. If you've made it this far, here's my challenge for the week. Say hello to the queer person you always see at the cafe, to a stranger in your yoga class, to the friend you've only known online. Say hello. Let's try to break out of ourselves and build, or try to build, something different. Have a different experience. Maybe not build, have a different experience. Because we don't rebuild community with algorithms. We rebuild it with moments. Tiny, brave moments. The moment you choose discomfort over disconnection. The moment you wave instead of swipe. The moment you ask, how are you? Really? I think we need more of those. And we need each other. Not just digitally, but deeply. And that's always going to start with a hello. We were really spoiled during the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, in other conversations I've had with other friends, there is a belief that this, should I say COVID-19, that those couple of years was a moment where a lot of us got to spend a lot of time with ourselves and to really see ourselves for the first time. And I think for a lot of people that really scared them. That really scared us because we didn't like what we saw. We didn't like the person or the versions of ourselves that we had created or that we had grown into. And I think when you're scared, a lot of things can happen to you. You can either shy away from that, and you can pick yourself apart. And I think a lot of people picked themselves apart, really broke themselves into tiny little pieces, hoping that maybe one day they'd be able to put themselves back together again. And it kind of became hard when we had to all go back into the world. But here we are. A couple of years later, not really out of chaos. In fact, walking straight into chaos, into more chaos. And we're all a little bit apprehensive. In the previous podcast episodes that I've had, I've talked about how challenging it has become to date. In other podcasts and other podcasts that I've listened to, I've heard about a loneliness epidemic. And the only way we're going to fix this is if we really make an effort to try different things, to put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations. I know that a lot of the times we talk about like our social anxieties and our anxieties just in general, or whatever the case might be, but I think we're now wearing these words, wearing these labels as shields to protect us from living our lives, from really trying something different with other people. I have a couple of friends and I've got many different conversations with them, and one of my friends who I often go for a walk with, she's always telling me how she's always afraid to get her heart broken. And I say to her, that is the point. That is the point of life, to get hurt. To find yourself in a sort of chaos and have to figure it out. It's how we enrich our souls. Because if you're always protecting yourself and you're always guarding yourself and you're always wanting to make sure that you don't get hurt, you miss out on so much. You never really get to experience the full picture and the full, I want to say frequency, the full frequency of life. I think that's what we're missing out on. So, to take us back into today's conversation, I don't think that gay apps are the only way of meeting other gay men. I think for a lot of gay men, it is a bit of a challenge because we do present a specific kind of way, and we always want to seem like, we're macho, we're tough, we're the man. We haven't really escaped masculinity in its entirety. We're also products of a patriarchal society which wants to portray men in a specific way and in a specific manner, and we often fall into these traps, and when we really should be liberating ourselves, but we fall into these traps and we find it hard to get out, and we find it hard to reach across the table and just say hi to a guy who we might find cute or attractive or whatever the case might be, or who we want to form a friendship with, because some of us out here are aloof. We're aloof presenting, even though we're looking for more queer spaces and more gay men to find friendship in. Okay. I think I've said a lot and I've done a lot of rambling here towards the end. But I'm trying to make up for last week's episode, which we didn't have. But I just want to thank you guys for spending this midweek moment with me. If this episode resonates with you, send it to someone who's also navigating, the difficulties of connecting in this hyper-connected world. And maybe, just maybe, for tonight, log off. Log off from everything. Maybe even this weekend, just log off. Go outside, take a walk, smile at strangers. Fall in love with life, fall in love with your own life. Strike up a conversation with a stranger. I don't know. Just do something different. Because we all need to be seen. But more than that, we need to be held. So, until next time, my loves, stay soft, stay in the light, stay beautiful. Ciao.